Lloyd Vance does a great job covering the NFL. Correspondent as well for the NFL Network. Good follow on Twitter. Always good to talk a little football with him. How you been, pal?
I'm doing good, too, but I've been eating some humble pie. All my neighbors and friends that live here, they said you picked against the Eagles, and they rubbed it in my face.
Well, you know what? Listen, sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. It just so happens. That's why you can't take it too serious when you start to do picks and whatnot. I learned this a long time ago, my friend. We have no control over the outcome of games.
Totally agree with you.
Now, I'll tell you, I was surprised. You know, again, the outcome of the Minnesota and the Eagles game, did it shock me? Yeah. Did the defensive effort surprise me? No. It was how well Nick Foles played. I mean, and I don't know, is this, and I'm going to dive into this a little later in the show, but is this an example of a player that is given an opportunity, obviously take advantage of it, but maybe they're just kind of peaking at the right time in their career?
Yeah, it could be the perfect storm where everything's falling in place for this Eagles team. All along, I thought they had a few holes here and there. And, of course, when they lose Wentz, you obviously think they're going to take a step back. Nick Foles, a guy who bounced around from the Eagles to the Rams and kind of a backup type, but he really just stepped it up in his game playing football that we haven't seen probably since that 7-touchdown game. So 26 to 33, 352 yards, 3 TDs, and he's driving the football down the field. All season, he hadn't made a lot of throws down the field when he had opportunities, but they just hit them over and over again for big plays. And the Eagles, once they had the lead, they just pinned their ears back. And Case Keenum, he's the guy that really looked like the backup out there.
You know, it's funny because I know out of Minnesota, they're talking about what direction they might want to go forward with their quarterbacks. I'm curious. Zimmer never was fully committed to this marriage, right? It was almost like an arranged marriage. All right, we got Case. He's playing lights out. That's because Bradford goes down. You got to deal with Bridgewater. He's not ready. But Zimmer, no, I don't recall one time during the course of this season where he was definitive saying, Case is my guy. And then when he has to pick 6 the other day and the broadcasters are talking about maybe going to Bradford, did you get the sense when he had that pick 6 that all of a sudden even the Vikings were saying to themselves, you know, oh, man, okay, this is the guy, we thought this was the guy, and there's a reason that the head coach never fully committed to him?
Well, they'll never say it publicly, but he was their stopgap guy. They gave him $2 to $3 million to come here after the Rams didn't want him any longer, and he was just happy to get a position. And it's going to be interesting to see what they do with those 3 quarterbacks. Obviously, Bradford, Bridgewater, and Keenum are all at the end of their contracts. But I think in the end, Rick Spielman, who's the general manager there, he's going to give Keenum a reward-type contract. It may not be up to Zimmer in this situation. Zimmer really concentrates on the defense. It's going to be interesting to see how they change things around with Pat Shermer going to the Giants. But I expect Keenum to be back there, but obviously it's got to raise some eyebrows in terms of how he played this week. And is that really him, or is it this guy that was really steady throughout the season?
When you look at the moves that Howie Roseman has made, and I know people have been critical of Howie in the past and who they drafted, who they didn't draft, especially when Chip Kelly was the head coach and he was really overseeing everything. You bring in a guy like Douglas, you insert back Howie into his familiar role as GM, doing the numbers, crunching the numbers, having input on personnel decisions. If you look, Sunday's game is a great example. Every player that they either acquired via trade or signed as a free agent, they all had a hand in the win the other day. And it's just, and again, I don't know if it was just, like you said, lightning in a bottle, one of those moments, but whether it was Ajayi, the trade, Blunt, Smith, Jeffrey, Robinson, Long, they all had a hand in that game the other day.
Yeah, he did a great job building this roster for this season. I think Joe Douglas, as you're saying, came in and helped him out, kind of give him a longer view plan of this team and not, you know, make for the big home run reach that sometimes burned Howie Roseman in the past. But they did a nice job in terms of personnel. This team is very deep at a lot of positions, particularly running back, and we see this at offensive line, defensive line. These are the strengths of the Philadelphia Eagles team, and he did a good job in terms of building his team up. That's why he was voted the executive year by Pro Football Writers Association. So kudos to him, but they still got a job to finish here, and it's going to be interesting 2 weeks to see if they can figure out the game plan to get the kryptonite to Brady and Belichick.
And I think that's it, right? We talk about the players. This might be the one game where you're really saying, hey, the X factor, look at the head coaches. Yeah, at the end of the day, it's always Tom Brady and Belichick, but now you have Doug, very foreign to Doug right now, territory, if you will. And then you have Belichick, who, oh, by the way, he's been around the block a couple times. And, you look at that AFC Championship game, and I thought Jacksonville had him. Now, I'm watching the game unfold, and I went back, and I kind of flip-flopped on this, but then when I watched the second quarter again, I kind of know why I said what I said yesterday. You had to be aggressive. And I was against that at first when I'm watching the game, because I figure don't want Bortles to make a mistake. You're going to get the ball back in the third quarter. It resulted in 3. But the fact that they ran it 3 times, they punted, Lloyd, with 2:05 on the clock, which is ridiculous because now you give the stoppage at the 2-minute warning. That was bad play calling there. I think they panicked a little bit, but ultimately they showed you they still, no matter what, did not have confidence in their quarterback.
They did. That's so true. And for 3 quarters, so they stuck to their game plan. They were grinding the clock. They led in time of possession 35 minutes, about 24 minutes or so. And they were just sticking to their game plan of grinding the clock. And Bortles was driving the football down the field when needed. That defense was getting a lot of energy. But, a couple key plays here and there in the second half, particularly that 3rd and 18, the fumble that wasn't allowed to be returned by Jack. I think that kind of frazzled them. And then let's not forget the penalties. I know Jacksonville guys are complaining about it, but, the Patriots seem to seize the moment. And unfortunately, they showed their experience, and the Jaguars showed their inexperience in this game.
Yeah, and again, it's almost like we forget it's an after fact. You're down 14-3, no Gronk, then 20-10, and oh, by the way, you have 3rd and 18. Jacksonville, make a stop. Don't give up 20 yards for Brady the Amendola. I mean, to me, they had their opportunity. It was there. And my point is, any team that's playing them going forward, and we're talking about the Super Bowl and the Philadelphia Eagles, you have to figure out a way to stay aggressive. You have to. You can't give them any life, right? You just can't. You can't give them an extra breath. When you have a chance to step on their throat, you have to step on their throat. Even Atlanta last year. Atlanta's up 25, and what did they do? Even if they got conservative in that situation, that's actually the right play. But they were trying to be aggressive. It backfired. Now, I know it's a different scenario, but still, when you have an opportunity to close them out, you got to close them out.
You're totally right. And early on in this game, Jacksonville was throwing the ball on first down, allowing Bortles to make plays. And then as they got the lead, they went very conservative. They were running Fournette over and over on first down, and the Patriots were just sitting on it. So you have to find that game plan, the right mix of short passes and runs to kind of loosen that Patriots defense up. I heard you talking before I came on. The Patriots, you're right. Across the middle, they have not been the best since Dutch Hightower has not been there. So they are susceptible to kind of swing passes, play action. You can beat them with that. And the secondary, let's face it, they do have some names there, and Gilmore and Rowe and a couple guys back there, but they're not one of NFL's best back there. And the Eagles, you saw what they did to the best secondary in the league. They did a really good job in terms of just beating up the Vikings and just hitting on all their opportunities out there.
12:36 on a Tuesday. Rich Quinones here. We'll take you up to 2. Lloyd Vance joins us. Great follow on Twitter at Lloyd Vance. Covers the NFL, the Eagles, and also Pro Football Writers Association. He's a contributor for the NFL Network. Always joins us weekly throughout the football season. We'll really get into the game itself next week. We got 2 weeks to basically dissect that. I want to just do a little housekeeping with you for a moment. We mentioned the Minnesota situation. You've got Keenum, you've got Bridgewater, you've got Bradford. I don't believe. Listen, it's almost like the Bortles thing, and we'll get into that. You got three free agent or pending free agent quarterbacks there in Minnesota. Worst case scenario, you probably want to keep a guy like Bradford just to be have a little depth. But do you believe that if they believe Bradford's going to be the starter, then okay, you're getting rid of Case, who led you to the NFC Championship, and you're giving up on Bridgewater because you can't have both.
Yeah, you can, and they're going to have to make a promise to either Keenum or Bradford. I think in terms of Teddy Bridgewater, they're going to let him go out, kind of see what the market is for himself. But let's face it, with that devastating knee injury, he's probably more of a backup at this stage in his career. Bradford, it's very tough to commit to him. We saw the Eagles in the past. They begrudgingly did it, and then they got rid of him because of his injury history. Let's face it, this guy has all the tools. He's always been paid very well, but he's just never been able to stay healthy, and he's never had a winning season. So I think with Spielman and Zimmer, when they sit down and look at the situation, I think in the end, Keenum's going to be their guy. and they're going to hope he can progress. But let's face it, at this stage in his career, he's 30 years old or so. Is he that journeyman type of guy that we saw in the past, or is he able to be a Pro Bowl starter, which he's going to be this year?
Yeah, and I heard Zimmer did say that he thinks Bradford's over the knee problems that basically knocked him out of the starting lineup for basically the whole season except for the first week. And kind of to your point, you got two veterans, you got still a young quarterback in Bridgewater who's coming off that devastating injury. So it bears worth watching what's going to happen in Minnesota. Because here's another thing. Now Pat Shurmur becomes the Giants head coach. So now you have a veteran quarterback in Eli Manning in New York. Now he's got to learn another offense. Now it does by all accounts seem that they're on the same page. He's going to come back. And I think that's kind of where I thought it was going to be. Even if they draft a guy, I know Gettleman mentioned he wants him back. I know management did as well. Now it's a high asking price. But if you go back to the Minnesota situation, you got 3 quarterbacks that are floating out there. Who knows what's going to happen in Jacksonville? Are they going to pay Blake Bortles $19 million? I mean, ultimately, they showed you they didn't have confidence in him. So even though he had a nice little run, we'll get to Eli in a second. Let's get to Bortles. Where do you think the future is when it comes to Blake Bortles in Jacksonville? Because I would not pay him $19 million a year, even though I thought he played well in the playoffs and didn't turn the football over.
And it's all going to come down to Tom Coughlin. He's the executive vice president of football operations down there. Yes, he'll talk to the head coach, but it's really going to be up to the front office to really look at Bortles, kind of break down his film. And when you have throughout the season, I'm not going to lie to you, it was pretty ugly. Yes, he picked it up near the end of the season, and he had that pretty good couple playoffs games. But, they got to understand, do they want to make that type of investment in him? And then we talk about the quarterback carousel that's spinning around the NFL. Alex Smith is probably going to pop out of the Chiefs. He may be available, and a couple other guys.
Kirk Cousins.
So Kirk Cousins as well. So, it's going to be interesting to see. But if it's me, I would not give Blake Bortles that type of money. I would kind of let him go out, see what his worth is, look at the draft class, guys that are playing the Senior Bowl and some of these other all-star events, and then kind of decide from there. But they don't need to do a quick yes at the beginning of the league year, which is starting March, and they'd have to commit that money to him then.
The Giants unofficially announced Pat Shurmur as their head coach on Monday. So here's the question. You have a couple priorities here, right? You're going to stick with Eli Manning, or you're going to try to make the transition from Eli to the next franchise quarterback, whether it's Davis Webb and/or the number 2 overall pick. Now, my gut, and from those that I've spoken to, if they do not believe in any of these quarterbacks, and if the best player available is there, which is probably the running back out of Penn State, Barkley, then they'll consider taking him. But here's the thing. If you draft a quarterback, whether it's Rosen, Allen, or Mayfield at number 2, and you stick with Eli for the next year and/or 2, and he plays out the rest of his contract and he retires as a Giant, you still have Davis Webb. You never had a chance to see what Webb can do. So you're in essence still, all you're doing is putting a little Band-Aid on a gunshot wound here. You understand what I'm saying? It seems as though they're still not, you want to make that transition. Not everyone can go from Favre to Rodgers or Peyton to, in essence, Andrew Luck. It's tough to do in the NFL.
Yeah, and sometimes you do need that stopgap guy. And I think they're going to bring them all to camp. Eli, Davis Webb, and also the rookie. They're probably going to bring in that rookie quarterback at number 2. That's just too high in the draft not to take a look.
But let me ask you, what if you? But let me ask you, Lloyd. What if you really don't believe they are? From what I'm told, they are so high on Webb, but we've never seen them. What if you just don't have any strong belief in any of these quarterbacks? Do you still take it because you do have the number 2 overall draft pick?
No, and then it's going to be their decision. A lot of these guys, if they don't believe in a quarterback, they're okay with passing on him. And let's face it, the Giants, and they have a history of winning, they can do that. Some teams that are more desperate and have to have a quarterback, they will pull the trigger and make the wrong decision, i.e. Cleveland. They could reach up for a guy like Johnny Manziel, Whedon, Brady Quinn. They're just grasping at straws trying to find a quarterback. So the Giants are in a very good situation because they have an established veteran. And then they do have Davis Webb, who had a pretty good college career, a guy who can make a lot of the throws and kind of take a look at. So if they don't like these other guys and you have a dynamic guy on defense that can play well like Mika Fitzpatrick, that cornerback that's coming back from Alabama, or Saquon Barkley, the running back you're talking about for Penn State. You know, these guys could be immediate impact on that team, and Eli could hold the fort down. So a lot of big decisions to make for the Giants, but I think they made the right decision in terms of moving on from McAdoo and kind of cleaning house and going in a new direction.
And we know this, right? Look at the Jacksonville Jags. They were 3-13 last year. If they would have made it to the Super Bowl, you can really say it's been one of the greatest turnarounds that we've seen, at least over the last 20, 30, 40 years in the NFL. Now, they won 10. They got to the AFC Championship. My point is, you can fix it real quick in the NFL. You can.
You can. You can. And we saw Jacksonville and the Eagles go worse from first. Every season we're seeing this. The Falcons did it the prior year before. So it can be done. And I'm a guy that likes to build around a defense. If I'm an architect of a team, you see that the Eagles, the Jacksonville Jaguars, as well as the Vikings made it pretty far with a stout defense.
All right, we got about a week plus to digest it, so I'll let you just kind of sit, marinate, watch your film, get your notes, talk to whoever you need to talk to, and we will talk next week, and we'll really get into the Super Bowl. Always appreciate it, pal.
All right, thanks. Look forward to it.
All right, you got it. Lloyd Vance, Pro Football Writers Association, great contributor as well for the NFL Network. Good follow on Twitter, @Lloyd Vance.